Hey, what's up, everybody? Big E here, and I am with Susie Chant. Hi, Susie.
Hi there, how you doing?
Good, I'm good.
Excellent.
Susie is the MLA here for beautiful North Vancouver-Seymour, and I am so excited to interview you, Susie. I know we talked about this in December, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate your office. Has been very professional. I was going to actually, before we get started, I'm just going to ask about the Premier and his help. You know, I thought, that's kind of like, I should just ask, how are you doing?
I am doing
pandemic
really
has
well.
been just so
No,
crazy.
I'm doing fine. I'm very fortunate. I've
Okay.
been always in a position where I'm what I do continues to roll. So I've been very, very lucky.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
No, I'm doing well,
I'm
thank
going to
you.
move this up a little bit. Have you heard any news about Premier Horgan about how
I
he's
just saw
doing,
the
or-
same health update that I think everybody else
Yeah,
is doing,
yeah.
saying that
Okay.
he's finished his radiation.
Right.
And now he's working on some other stuff on sort of taking some time. I'm hoping that he's taking some time to rest and heal.
Right.
Although I have my doubts because he works far too hard.
Well, from what I hear, you're also a very hard worker, so it takes
Now and
one to
again.
know one.
There we
Yeah.
are, yes.
Okay, well, to get started here, I would be remiss not to just mention a little bit about your background, and I always like to get people's origin stories, and so let's do that, and let's check it out. We're here. I really love this place, by the way. This Lynn Valley corner.
Yeah, Plaza.
Plaza, yeah.
This is Library Plaza.
The
right here
Triangle.
is our community library.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
We're surrounded by small businesses.
Delaney's
Yeah.
is one of my favorite coffee shops. So I found it interesting that you're a registered nurse, which I thought was a really cool. I mean, considering we're in a pandemic, what a great qualification to have as a community leader.
Yeah.
And you're also former RN team leader with Vancouver Coastal Health. You're currently serving as a member of the Cabinet Working Group on Mental Health Addiction and Homelessness.
Correct.
For the province. And I just want to give a shout out to Judy Darcy, who was the former
Absolutely.
Minister of Mental Health Addiction, I believe, in where I was living in New Westminster, and Peter Julian and those folks
Yeah.
there are just incredible.
Absolutely.
And also your assistant, Eli, I think he advised that you're a member of the Children and Youth Committee for the Legislative Assembly here in BC.
That is correct. Yep.
Wow, that's
and I'm
really
also on
interesting.
FOIPA, the FOIPA committee.
Yeah, and what's
which
the
is just,
FOIPA?
Freedom of Information and
Oh.
privacy. So yes.
We've got to talk. That's one of my major
Okay,
things.
we can talk. Don't
Okay,
worry.
but first I want to get back to this. For over 40 years, you were a member of the Royal Canadian Navy Reserve.
Correct.
For over 40 years?
Yep.
Wow.
42 years.
And you taught nursing students in Saipan. Of course,
Correct.
everybody knows where Saipan. I thought it was in Taipei, but
Yeah. No. Go to Guam, turn left.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're an active member of the Girl Guides of Canada, or is that right?
Not as active as I'd like to be.
Okay.
I'm what's called a member at large now, which means I show up when they really need me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
guess
I'm
I'm
still a
kind of
member. Yep.
I guess I'm kind of. I like their cookies. I eat their cookies. So.
Perfect. That's a great contribution. Thank you.
And you've been a Sun-run clinic leader for 25 years around getting
Just
folks
coming
more
to-
active.
Correct.
So you must have been pretty happy to see Dr. Bonnie Henry open up the gyms and the clubs here
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
BC.
No. I mean it's important. I mean it's important that we do the best we can for the health and the mental health and well-being of everybody that's involved.
Right.
And to bring the gyms back on stream is great. However, closing them had its importance as well. But it's great that they're back on. So I'm glad to see it.
And on top of all of this, you're also a mother. I like to say a mother of 3 because you've got a dog, Merlin, I believe, right?
I do, yes.
One of them's canine, 2 of them are human beings. Yep. And also your husband sounds like an interesting business. He supports technologies that help improve the lives of folks dealing with significant disabilities.
Yeah, he fixes, maintains, and repairs equipment for people with disabilities, specifically around low vision and blindness most of the time.
Okay.
And the odd speaking machine.
Oh,
So,
boy.
yeah, he's got a very specialized skill set.
Is that right? So you
Yeah.
two really are doing a lot here in terms of just doing your part in the community.
We try hard.
Thinking
Sure.
bigger than yourselves.
Yep.
Great. So I think that's a very interesting sort of bio, and I'm just curious, like, what your origin story is here. Part of the getting to know folks on here is just like, Susie Chant, and where do you come from?
We've talked about a lot of stuff. When I grew up, my dad was very much part of service organizations.
Okay.
He was a teacher and a high school and elementary school administrator.
Yep.
And my mom was a small elementary school librarian. So they were all about the community. And my father was a scoutmaster and had soccer teams and did all that kind of stuff, and my mom was involved with helping way back when, before it became cool, to support English as a second language. As a small school librarian, she often had children of new immigrants, and so she would be working with the children, but she'd also bring the parents in to help with their English as well during school, school time and stuff, so that they were able to be able to be integrated into the community a little more quickly or effectively.
And was this here in North Vancouver?
My mom actually worked in Burnaby. I grew up on the North Shore, but I actually grew up in West Van.
West Van.
Yeah, and so I grew up in that kind of environment. In high school, right after high school, I went on Katimavik, which was a Youth Canada organization at the time that you went across Canada and learned about different parts of Canada, and did service work in communities across. And that's actually when I got involved with the military as well. I did my initial military training then with Katimavik, and then when I got back, I started with the military. When I started with university.
But I just ask you, when you say military training, was this with guns and stuff, or were you?
You did have to. I started.
Role of a Navy.
When you do your basic training, you don't have any trait per se. We all get the same. Well, we all. It has evolved, I promise. We all get the same level of training initially, and then you go into a trajectory of a trade. So I got my basic military training with Katimavik, and yes, it does involve guns because you do have to be able to shoot. It's an expectation. I wasn't a very good shot, I got to tell you. I think they called it suppression fire. And then I went in. Yes, I was a medic, so for the first while, till 94, I was in the medical trade. Okay. And then in the Navy Reserve, they got rid of the medics because we couldn't keep our trade fresh. So and anytime the boats are at sea for any significant amount of time, they've got medical personnel, the regular force, medical personnel. So I became sort of a general administrator at that point. And so everybody needs general administrators.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're being very modest here. Okay, so I noticed that you were conducting a series of library chats last fall and winter. I think that was right here at
one here and in the Parkgate Library, which is in Park.
Wow, can you tell me a little bit about those? That sounds like
I just basically would come to the library at a given time that was on a poster so that people knew. And then tell me what you want to talk about. Right. And we'd talk. And I not a large group, usually 4 to 6 people. Okay. And we just talk about things that they wanted to talk about.
And what did they talk about? I'm curious, what's on the mind of folks
COVID
here?
was part of it. At one point, we had a member of the community who had a real bad problem with the atmospheric flood. So she came and spoke to us about it, and we took that a little bit further. We've had people come and talk about, we had one gentleman who's brought forward talking about, now I'm trying to think what the right words are, using quality of life indicators, like not just gross national product and all that kind of stuff to measure how a society is doing, but start to look at quality of life indicators as well, which I found really interesting, and it's something I'd like to look into further because it makes a lot of sense to me. Folks would ask, I did a little bit of talking about what do you do in the legislature, which, was a learning thing for me, and I don't expect anybody really knows. So we would talk about that a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments that we've had over the year around various different things and stuff. So it's always great, and people are very, very, they may have differing opinions, but it's a conversation, and it's really lovely. Yeah,
and so not just like those sessions, but in general, you're out there with the community, and what's the number 1, number 2 things, like what's on the people's minds that around here?
Boy. We got a few sort of big ticket items. I think one of the big ones is housing. I mean, housing is really tough for just about everybody at this point. You've got family members that can't afford to live in the community that they grew up in. I've got daughters who are 28 and 23, and neither of them live in our area. There's no way in God's good earth they could afford to. However, I am lucky they are they are well established. But housing for the middle level crew, you know, if you don't already own somewhere, the chances of you actually owning are difficult.
Right.
And we do have a housing issue. We do have a group of people that are unhoused in our community, just as every other community does. And so housing right across the spectrum is a concern. And we also have people that are really concerned about the taxes they're paying on their houses that you know, have appreciated significantly over the last 15 years. I was speaking to some people this morning who have a group home in one of our neighborhoods, and it's been assessed at 1.4 million for tax purposes. Well, it's a house providing services and care for a group of people who are unable to care for themselves. So how are we going to tax it at a 1.4 million, you know?
Yeah,
piece?
but I mean, also it's a good problem to have when your properties are appreciating that much in value.
Well,
I mean,
however,
but,
that continues to make it so that people can't afford them, you know, in the market, and nor, you know, can you afford to sell because you can't afford to buy anywhere else. And if we ever get this properly solved, it'll be magic.
All right. Yeah. And I think also affordability would also be part of that conversation in general.
Oh,
not just
absolutely.
Because affordability can be part of rent and that, but it can also be like just our everyday lives.
And also, you know, the language. Because we talk about affordable housing, we talk about market housing, we talk about subsidized housing. There, you know, there's all these things that we talk about, but they mean different things to different people. And so, you know, what is affordable from my perspective may not be affordable from your perspective, and so on. So there's really actually a communication piece around housing that I've noticed as well.
Interesting. Okay, well, this kind of I wanted to kind of get about what people are saying and maybe what we're doing about it. You know. And so your party, the Progressive New Democrats, they've been in power now for about 5 years. I know this is your first term.
They came in 2017. They were in 2017, and they formed a coalition government at that point.
Right.
And so they got quite a lot of stuff up and running. And you know, with the coalition and that support, and then when Premier Horgan decided in 2020 to give the province the opportunity to say, is this the direction you want to keep going, or do you want somebody else to take charge? The province, you know, gave us the mandate fairly solidly.
And Andrew Weaver, I believe, of the Greens was there to help prop up and allow you to form government, because he could have just as easily sided with
absolutely,
Christy Clark. I call her corrupt Christy Clark and her Liberals, you know.
Now.
I think that's going to come out with one day, you know, these offshore tax havens. Don't get me started.
We'll let you take that one on. You can have that rant. Anyway, so, you know, we got the mandate, and yes, I just came aboard in 2020. Which was, you know, quite interesting, because my area was not an NDP area for a long time.
I know, that's what I find amazing.
1970s,
Really?
Yeah.
So this has not been a New Democratic since the 1970s?
No.
Wow.
No. So, you know, it's been a Liberal stronghold for a long time, and people are tired of the way things were happening. So I was very fortunate.
So how did that feel to come out as the victor?
Oh, it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
I will say that I know lots and lots of people here, and I know that they were ready for change in a number of ways. And so, you know, and I will work. They know I will work.
Well, you certainly come across as someone that's ready for the challenge.
Thank you.
You know, I really could sort of feel that with you.
That.
And especially with just sounds like you've had that's one thing I love about the New Democrats. They have such an amazing, diverse background of these people that come from all of these fields, and all of them have the one common thread that seem to be thinking bigger than themselves. And I have an aversion of people saying that all politicians are all on the take, they're all in it for themselves and this kind of thing. And I really don't feel that.
I don't have that option. I got too many people looking at me and going, behave yourself.
That's great. That's great. And then speaking of historic, in 2020, the NDP swept into power, winning 55 of 87 seats.
58.
Was it 58?
I think it's 58.
Well, it's about 2/3 anyways. 2 out of every 3 MLAs in BC, I mean, under the New Democrats. That's amazing.
It is quite remarkable. And you were talking about the diversity. We've got amazing diversity.
Yeah.
And we've got majority of one woman.
I know.
Ta-da!
Hey, you're the deciding vote.
No, not me. I'm sure it's one of the other ladies, but
that's so cool.
And we've got really good representation across the board from a variety of cultures,
Yeah.
from a
LGBT
variety.
community.
We've got all sorts of wonderful folks there, all of whom are really committed and working towards making BC as best as it can be for all of us,
Right,
for everybody.
right. Well, good. I hear a lot of politicians say that, but I actually have some things to sort of add to that.
Yep.
But what I found interesting is CTV did a poll, and 45% of the popular vote the NDP got last election, highest percentage in a generation, according to CTV, and they gave a couple of reasons why. First of all, it said Premier John Horgan is by far the most popular
Yep.
leader in the country,
Yes.
provincial leader, Premier John Horgan.
Yep.
Why do you think that is?
I
His good
think
looks?
because he's a demonstrably hard worker. I'm not going there. He's a demonstrably hard worker.
Yeah.
He understands people. He gets people.
Right,
And he talks to people. He's real. And he wants to do his level best. For everybody. And that's his constant focus. He's not off doing other stuff. He is focused all the time,
Right,
the time.
right.
And with us as a caucus, I understand in other places the caucus doesn't get much access to their leader.
Right.
He's with us regularly.
Accessibility,
He's accessible. I have literally phoned him and said, spoken to him directly on whatever the topic was at the time. And, he has called me directly, and it's the same for all of us. It's,
Wow.
we don't have a cadre of the inner circle or anything like that. We are very much, we have a lot of access. And
Right.
that is great.
Huh. Well, that goes to explain the maybe I was trying to figure out why Alberta's Jason Kenney is the least popular premier, and I also hear that he's not very accessible. That
Yeah.
seems to be one of his
Yeah.
things. I know his attorney general was just under. He got a ticket for, I think, using his phone in his car, and so he called up the police chief in the city, and he was like, "Hey, can you do something about this?"
Just pay for the ticket. You're
unbelievable.
busted. You
So,
did it. You paid for it. Honestly.
yeah. And I love folks from Alberta. I got lots of family in Alberta. However, I was crunching the numbers in the COVID numbers this month, earlier in January. 1 out of 18 folks in BC with COVID or have got COVID since it began.
Yeah.
1 in 12 in Alberta, our sister province right next door.
Yeah.
That's a 50% more people are getting COVID in Alberta
I am going to
than
give
British
absolute
Columbia.
credit to Dr. Bonnie Henry and Adrian Nix.
Yeah.
For being steady and steadfast in having a plan and working it through, and gathering as much information and preparing to pivot as much as possible, and also to the province of British Columbia, to the people of British Columbia who have said, okay, here it is, let's do it, let's get through it, and let's do the best that we can and work together, and that's critical.
Well, on behalf of the
Yeah.
people, I'm a person in British Columbia. Thank you very much.
You're ever so welcome, of course.
That's funny you mentioned that. My number 2 thing, and this goes back to this poll here that, or like CTV were saying, why, is the NDP so popular here? And number 2 is Dr. Bonnie Henry.
Yes.
And you being a registered nurse, can you just talk a little bit about like why is that important that we listen to the, the experts on pandemics? It seems like everybody's a pandemic these days.
Everybody's
Have you
an
noticed that?
expert.
Like
yes.
everyone's an
Yes,
expert on
yes.
pandemics.
We all hear from many people who are experts, and it's
Right.
great. And the reality is that we all need the tools. Okay, we all need the tools and the information, and we all need to make the best decision we can how to use those tools to protect ourselves, our families, our communities.
Right.
And in this case, when we're dealing with a pandemic, we're also looking at protecting our province, protecting our country, and protecting our world. So when we've got somebody who is got a lot of knowledge and has a lot of connections too, because that's the other part. Is she's not doing this alone. She's doing it in conjunction with, across Canada
Sure.
and throughout the world, and looking at what's going on in other places, looking at what other places have tried, and doing the best as possible to say, okay, for British Columbia, given the parameters that we have, given our geographic parameters, given our health resources, given everything else,
Right.
these are the decisions we need to make. And somebody's got to make those decisions. You can't just kind of have everybody going higgledy-piggledy, especially in a pandemic, because we'll end up with far more people getting it badly, and passing away.
Right, right.
And so we have someone who has a clear vision and who has a strong commitment, very, very strong commitment. She's been doing this solidly since the pandemic began.
Right.
Some maybe a little bit before, and she's carrying on with it, you know. And we are very, very lucky. We are very, very fortunate.
Right.
And to have also Adrian Dix, who works with
Minister
her,
of Health, yeah.
Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, and also our Premier, who are working with her and who are listening to her recommendations and supporting them. And that's a really important part.
But this goes back to the fundamental aspect of politics about who do we put first, the needs of the people or the needs of the corporate profits? I was measuring globally about how the pandemic is being handled by different countries, and to a T, the ones that are like these, driven by these far-right leaders, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Johnson in UK, it was Trump before Biden in the US, and these countries are having a horrible time with the pandemic. And then you've got these countries, the progressive nations that are putting the people over the profits, and I think that's I don't think there's enough discussion about that and how important that is.
Yeah, and I think actually we've struck a really good balance between both of those things, because the economy has got to continue to run.
Good point.
And you lock everything down, that has a significant impact on the economy. It also has a significant impact on the community writ large. So what Dr. Henry and Adrian Dix and Premier Horgan have been doing is trying to strike that balance so that our worlds can keep going, but keep going a little safer. Right. So that our kids can stay in school, so that our businesses, as best as we can keep them running. It's a very difficult line to walk, and they have done a spectacular, in my opinion, a spectacular job of walking that line.
Are you looking at my notes or something? Because I was going to say that about, this goes back to that CTV about how we have a moderate government they were talking about, and I interpret this as being like how you're doing a great job at the most important reason for finding the right balance in British Columbia between meeting the needs of industry and business and protecting the environment, So when you think about what's important to the people, the environment's important to the people, also, business and our economy is important to people. And it's finding that balance, I think, is really that's the trickiest thing about
everybody going, is working on that balance. And the other thing that you'll find that's maybe a little bit different with our government is that the ministries are working together. They're talking to each other, they're collaborating with each other, they're working on things together. We're not having the silos that are, this silo doing this thing and this silo doing this thing and having a clash. And we're also trying to work out some of the things where the clash has been recognized. You'll notice, for instance, in the recent floods, we had agriculture, highways, and the Minister Farnham all working together, because those were the three that really needed to get in with, when the floods, and dig in with the floods. So you'll notice that ministries are really working together much more collaboratively than maybe has been seen in the past.
And I think it's so important that we recognize how important business, especially small business, medium-sized businesses.
Absolutely.
I'm a business person. I've had an incorporated company since '96, so people sometimes they're surprised at that because they go, but you come across as a real bleeding heart progressive, Eric, and so, but I see the value of how important the business community
is. An underpinning. It has to be. We're, all of these things are important.
Right.
And we need to make sure we value and respect all of those things and support all of them. We can't just pick one sector and say, okay, we'll put all our resources here. We can't do that. It doesn't work.
But the difference is, up until the NDP passed a legislation that doesn't allow all this big money coming in. I remember when, was it Adrian Dix? He was the leader of the NDP before John Horgan. And I remember he was ahead of the polls, everything was going great. And then right before the election, about a month or two, there was this massive amount of it was like imperial conditioning, how the NDP was going to destroy the economy and they're going to be bad for business and everything was going to fall apart. And here you are, and we've got the best economy in the province. We've got the best environmental protections. Sorry, not the province, the country. And so the fact that you've been able to be so successful in creating a healthy business climate, of course, I don't want to take away from all of the small businesses that have been suffering through this pandemic, and it's not just here, it's everywhere.
My heart goes out to them, absolutely.
But I still think, relatively speaking, that we're doing good here in British Columbia and relative to so many other places. Some of the promises made, promises kept. The CBC did an analysis for this from last September, and I actually just put a post up on Facebook earlier today. They said, according to their statistics, 79% of the promises that were made by the BC NDP since they formed government have been kept.
Wow, that's great.
Like, that's 4 to 5. I was like, when you think about how many promises are kept by politicians in general.
Yeah, well, I don't have a lot of data on that, so I can't speak to
It's not good. It's not good.
It's not good. Okay.
It's like,
Well.
I mean, I don't have to tell you that. I'm just saying historically, right?
Okay.
Like, isn't that kind of the thing about politicians? They promise the world and then they deliver.
Yeah.
Lucky if they deliver a fraction.
Yeah.
79%.
Well, that's pretty good. I'm impressed by that.
Things like the $10 a day daycare, over 33,000 kids and counting here in British Columbia, 24,000 rental and co-op homes being built, have been built or being built, raising disability and welfare rates, tackling housing crisis by imposing the speculation tax, making life more affordable by limiting the bridge tolls. I know that there's always been free here, the Second Arrows Bridge, but Port Mann, Golden Ears, freezing BC Hydro rates, $400 renter rebates, $30 million annual fund for school supplies, and more recently, just as January 1st, I believe there was like, isn't it like 5 paid sick days now?
That's
for
correct.
Not just for union workers, but for any
for anybody
employee.
whose contract doesn't include it already.
Susie, those are huge. I mean,
Those
those are
are
huge.
And you didn't talk about the ICBC rebates, did you?
Freezing BC Hydro. Oh, not
That's
ICBC rate. Oh, sorry.
ICBC
Yeah, please
had,
tell.
Well, of course, we had the ICBC rebates, and now the ICBC rates are lower than they've ever been, and we also stopped the MSP payments. So that
Right. So no
so,
MSP,
we're
the
trying very
medical
hard
services
to bring
plan.
down the cost per household.
Because the general thing was like make life more affordable for British Columbians,
Correct.
and then so folks listening, watching, when you hear these things about, well, what is the NDP doing that's different than what the Liberals did? You know, these are some really tangible
we've got a fairly prolific
examples.
list. Yeah.
Who do we got here? We got Kevin Hansen, head basketball coach at UBC on the call. We got Kim Bond. She's actually a personal trainer out in Langley.
Lovely.
I've lived here 33 years and I'm leaving. And I'm now leaving what I know is home. Oh, that's not good. Boy, oh boy. Oh, she's just said the same thing about the housing is insane here.
Yep.
And I agree with you there.
Yep.
Another thing, virtually no scandals by this NDP government. I think Jeannie Sims had one, but she was cleared by an independent prosecutor. According to the CBC, or CTV, that was the only remote scandal. Like, again, I don't take these things for granted. You know, I mean, governments are known for having a lot of.
Yeah. And I may be naive, and I may have rose-colored glasses, but we are accountable to our constituents. Everybody that has voted us in, we are accountable to, and we are accountable to each other. And so far, I am seeing everybody doing the best they can to meet that, and I'm pretty pleased.
Hello.
Hi.
Excuse me. I just wonder how I can get to the upstairs.
Just right here. There's a set of stairs right here, or an elevator.
Oh, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Good luck.
Okay, and then as mentioned before, taking the big money out of the campaign
Campaigns,
finance reforms. I mean, there's that argument about how, well, unions, pay and then corporations pay. I think it's kind of skewed because these big corporations have so much money, and even now I'm kind of questionable about how they can sneak in there through social media, Facebook and Google, and there's really no accountability there. So maybe that's something you can work on with the freedom of information.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, freedom of information may come in useful there.
Yeah. And then I've got one here, a local initiative here. I was doing some research on what you've been accomplishing, and the Center for Childhood Studies, set to open in 2 years. It's going to allow more folks here in North Vancouver to have access to childcare.
Early childhood education. Well, there's two parts to it.
Yeah, please.
First of all, so this is all centers out of Capilano University, which is local here, and it also has a campus down by Lonsdale Quay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they have a very extensive, comprehensive, and robust early childhood education program. And to work with that, they also have a child care center that is staffed effectively, and then also allows the early childhood educators to have preceptorship time, so that they have the opportunity to implement the stuff that they're learning and to take that time to actually learn in the classroom. And they've actually expanded their seats there, so it's served two purposes. One, it allows for a greater access for the students that are learning to be early childhood educators, and secondly, it's brought more daycare seats to our area, which is a little short on them.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
you start getting a little further east in North Vancouver, the daycare is a little hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know my son, he goes to Langara, but that's one of his complaints, and he's really sort of rethinking school, like, because there's so much to do with the theory often in school, post-secondary.
And
the
not
fact
so
that
much
you're-
of the practical.
Yeah, and the fact that
Yeah,
you're
and
giving
that-
these students some
This
hands-on,
allows
real-life
full integration
training.
of practical.
So,
yes.
What
do you do with a crying 2-year-old? That's a practical skill.
Right. Well, you're a mom. I'm a dad. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
know.
we know.
You
Well,
probably
we
more
know
than me.
some
but-
things.
Yeah.
What may
yeah.
work for my 2-year-old.
Oh my goodness.
Border Collie alert.
And also speaking of Capilano University, shout out to Owen Cutler on the men's basketball team. I coached him in elementary school.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
he plays on the team.
Excellent.
I just wanted to give a shout out also to your assistant Eli. I met him upstairs. The fact that he's in political science major from SFU with a BA there.
Yep.
He's sitting on the District of North Vancouver's Community Service Advisory Committee. I thought that was very cool. It showed a lot from a younger adult, how he's engaged in the community and being so
Very much
active.
so.
With all of the things he's doing around sports, and yourself included, and you partake in a healthy lifestyle. And
I try hard. I mean, when you have a dog, you have no choice.
Right.
You have to get out and about.
That's true.
What
Rain
it is.
or shine,
Rain
right?
or shine, and it's also very important for all of us for self-care.
Right,
to
right.
get out and to get outside and to get a decent amount of exercise in some way or another. And I try to do that as much as I can.
Good for you, and thank goodness that the gyms and health clubs are open again, because that was one thing I was kind of struggling with over Christmas. I love the Matrix movies. I think we live in the Matrix, in terms of our, not so much provincially, but federally, we have this perception of what goes on and what really goes on,
Yeah.
But I'm really happy to see that, we're doing the right things by opening up the gyms. I know all the health club owners wanted that. I worked out today. I was so happy, and I'm so great to see that, we're on the right track there.
Very
so,
good. Yep.
Okay, Susie Chant, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Are we allowed to shake hands?
we will
All
shake
right,
hands.
we're both fully
Absolutely.
vaccinated, and
Lovely
get
to
out
see you.
there and
Yep.
support,
Very
what's
good.
going on in North
well,
Vancouver.
thank you for your time. I've enjoyed this very much.
Okay, thank you, Susie.
Okay,
My pleasure.
nice to talk to you.
Okay, thanks
Okay.
you guys.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.